There's a 6-second delay too. So let me get my Facebook all set up here so we can see it.
Yes.
So we can. It's
You've gotten
happening.
so fancy with your technology.
You know, look at me. All right, here we go. So hi, everybody. Today is Wednesday, right? Because it's Red for Ed. And today we are talking to my good friend and fantastic candidate who is also a teacher, Nik Martin. So Nik and I actually met. He is in my legislative district, LD 24, and we met at a happy hour, the West Side Happy Hour at Sunup Brewery way back. Gosh, that was so long ago.
It was a year ago because it was when I just moved here.
That's so crazy. So yeah, so we met and we immediately became fast friends, I feel like. And then he told me that he is going to do this crazy thing and run for school board in Phoenix L. So Nik, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Give us some of your background.
Yeah, well, first of all, super happy we met at that brewery that one day. So yeah, so again, my name is Nik Martin. I'm a fourth grade, now a fifth grade teacher. I just moved schools to a Title I school in Paradise Valley. And about in November, decided I wanted to run for school board after just seeing some inequities and different things at the school level. So made that decision and been doing it ever since.
And I'd like to say that you've been doing the heck out of it too. You know,
Thank you.
It's not necessarily instinctive, right? Running for office at all, you know, like, and school boards, you know, you don't get paid. So this is truly a labor of love, and it's a passion. And you just kind of went in, you know, just head first and did all the things. I was constantly seeing Nik at different events, and he's just really super active and engaged and just a really kind-hearted person. And
Thank you.
he gets on the board.
Thank you.
So inequities. Okay, so you came from a Title I school, correct? And now you're going to another Title I school. Is your entire experience in Title I school settings?
Yeah, so my entire career is in Title I settings. And when I was also doing my internships in college, that was a major focus of mine as well.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your platform.
So I think now more than ever, we need teachers on school boards, or not just on school boards, at every governing level. So I know you know that. And so a little bit about my platform is it comes from my experience in the classroom. That's where these ideas come from. Because I always say, my story is my students' stories. Right. So we're talking about things like equity, which you and I can get into in a little bit, because that word is thrown around so much in education, and we can delve a little bit more into what that possibly means. Accountability. I think there's a huge accountability piece to the community of not finding out about school closures through news articles and making sure that we are accountable to the needs of the community as well. And then finally, some transparency through little steps like making our board meetings live streamed and available in multiple languages. Little things like that creates access and transparency to the board.
Okay. You know, it makes me think of last week I was talking to Katie Pates, who's a board member in Osborne School District. Talks a lot about engaging with the community and how important that is. Okay, I just have to say something real quick. Elvis Richardson is watching, and two of my former students, Anthony Morales and Courtney Trapp, are watching. So that's just so cool when they like come onto my Facebook Live and I get to say hi to them. Hi guys, nice to meet you. So, you know, I didn't really talk about this with you before, but I have to bring it up, right? What just happened with the Kyrene candidate? I'm not going to say his name. So I know that you have a bit of a history here, and I hope you don't mind bringing this up.
Not at all. No.
Because this is why these school board races are so important, because, you know, the first job of educators is obviously academics, to teach, but it's also to keep our kids safe, to keep our teachers safe, you know, and that's something that's just going on in my head like crazy because of all the COVID stuff. But if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with that particular board member and what happened, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so I have no problem saying his name. Is that okay if I do?
Go ahead. That's fine.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So we were talking about Scott Weinberg, and he was running for the Kyrene School Board. And about a year ago, before I decided I was going to run for office, Arizona was in the thralls of that no promo homo repeal. And there was a lot of discussion about what sex education is going to look like here in the future. So the State Board of Ed meeting had the State Board of Ed had a meeting, and we're discussing some of the language changes. And Purple for Parents had gotten a hold of this, and we're pushing out everywhere. We need people to show up. We need people to show up. I mean, I'll give it to them. They showed up. And I was there maybe with 5 other people wearing red shirts, and it was terrifying because I was like, we were all shoved into one room together, like an overflow room, and people had phones out and were just sitting there recording us. I was eating a bag of chips. I don't know what they really caught. And so eventually I got up, did my piece about, LGBTQ inclusivity, and woke up the next morning to my face plastered everywhere on social media. It was led by Purple for Parents. Scott Weinberg was involved, and others. I can take posting on my social media. I mean, thank God for block buttons. Like, that's kind of my philosophy on that. But what they did was they took it a step further and started to contact my school district, our superintendent, and making claims like I was sexualizing and grooming children, all because I spoke out in favor of comprehensive sex ed. So it was a really tough time. Luckily, my district was supportive during that time and dismissed those comments. But it was a super, super dark time, and was ultimately what motivated me to run in the end, because I started to realize, oh my goodness, these school board races are important, and we need teachers and their experience on those boards. So it turned into a positive thing, but it was definitely a really, really tough time for a while.
And so, these school board races, when we do have folks like that who are running, it's really important that we expose their bigotry. And to me, it's always kind of mind-boggling to not want to offer students comprehensive sex ed, human growth and development, because it's to keep them safe. It's to give them the vocabulary that they need if they're ever in an uncomfortable situation. It allows them to learn about their own personal boundaries and how they, can let somebody know if they don't feel safe. So I'll never understand that disconnect about it, and it's opt-in. So it's
opt-in. It's not a requirement. So it protects your religious liberties. If you would like that, you don't have to opt into it. But why rob other people who do want that opportunity? And what scares me more than their attack on sex ed is their attack on equity programs and their attack on just basic social emotional learning. Like, they want all of that gone. And that scares me a lot too.
And, that's a good segue real quick to talk about, I had a conversation yesterday with somebody about returning to school, and I'm going to be having another discussion tonight with board members across the Valley and what we're all thinking about. And that is, the social emotional aspect of this situation that we're in, and the trauma. I mean, even if you're in the best of circumstances, this is still a traumatic event, not being able to say goodbye to your teachers and your friends. But then we have kids who, some of them, I was talking to another teacher, and she discovered that one of her students lives in a 2-bedroom with 10 other people, so being cooped up like that, missing out on a quarter of school. What are you thinking about when we talk about going back to school? But real quick, I do want to say hi to a couple other people. Suzanne, amazing candidate in LD25 is watching, and Sophia Ramirez, who's another great candidate who's running in my district, Creighton. So I just want to say hi to them. So yeah, what do you see happening? What are the challenges going to be? And what was it like for you? I'm sorry, I'm asking you 1,000 questions. That's
okay. I'll construct a narrative in my brain somewhere.
So tell me first about what the school year was like for you. Before we started the Facebook Live, you told me that your internet is spotty. So I just want to know what you expect going back.
Yeah, so I was in a fortunate situation where a lot of my master's degree was focused on educational technology. So my students were very exposed to it. So that the learning curve for my students was a little less. but the access to technology issue was still there as well. So that was a lot of our focus in educating parents. But I always say I started with a little bit of an advantage just because my students were familiar with the platform once we got the technology into their hands. I mean, it sucks still, don't get me wrong. Like knowing I was going to be leaving that school and to have to teach online was still a really tough experience. But going back, I'm sitting on a lot of committees right now, and this is what I'm preaching from the rooftops, is I hear this term, and you might have seen me post it on Facebook, the COVID slide. Have you heard of that? Yeah. And I'm all about COVID trauma is greater than COVID slide. Couple things is, number one, teachers have already mapped out their standards and state testing was coming. So a lot of the teachers taught the standards before a lot of this happened too, or was preparing for review. And number two, we both know you can't do any learning until trauma is taken care of. So we got to get rid of that term COVID slide if that's the beginning of our conversation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. First and foremost, well, first of all, 99% of what we do as educators is build relationships, and that's what we do for the first few weeks of school anyway, really figuring out our kids, finding out what motivates them, getting to know their names, their home situation, whatever, and so we really need to focus on relationships first. I mean, obviously academics are important, and we're going to see an even bigger gap between, I think, the haves and the have-nots. So those kids obviously are going to need those supports, but we need to make sure that they're okay. Just that they're okay. They're human beings. They're not widgets. So
exactly.
We need to make sure that our kids are okay. As far as you and your colleagues, other people, just anecdotally, how many teachers, if you were to take a guess, how many of your teachers, maybe out of percentages, would say they don't feel comfortable coming back, or classified staff for that matter?
Oh man, not coming back. I would say it's probably a low percentage on the campus I just left. I think some people are ready to go back on my campus personally. I'm not necessarily. I think it's so tough to make a choice until we know what those guidelines are. But I know there's a lot of people who are anxious, and that makes me a little bit nervous. But as I sit on all these committees too, I also keep realizing I don't know if there's a right answer to a lot of this. I think we're going to see a lot of holes we're going to have to patch up throughout the process too. But educators are the people who do that, right? I mean, we threw together online learning in like 3 weeks.
It was truly amazing, seeing all the work that teachers were doing, struggling with the technology, worrying about their kids, having to teach their own kids. I mean, the teachers can really move mountains. And so, no matter what the future holds, I mean, if there's going to be a second wave or whatever else, I can't think of a better, professional group of people to be able to handle it, because the innovation that I've seen over the last couple of months just has knocked my socks off, really. It's been amazing.
And my concern is just because people are being innovative, but people are also extenuating, stretching themselves out further. And I'm just so fearful as well that this might have an impact on teacher retention. It's going to have an impact on teacher retention. And that I think is going to be very detrimental as well. Yeah,
it definitely makes me nervous about teacher retention, because we're already really in a bad place here in Arizona. Our teacher retention crisis in this state, we surpassed just about every other state with regards to, I mean, we have 30,000 people in the state of Arizona who have valid certificates, and they are unable or unwilling to use that certificate to teach because the working conditions are so poor in so many places. So I'm fearful of that as well. There's a few other people who jumped on. Alfredo, another former student, Dave Larson, and Jeff Fortney, who's another great candidate who will actually be.
Love Jeff. Hi, Jeff. Jeff and I worked together for a little bit.
That's right. I knew that about you guys. That's right. That's so cool. Oh, and we've got Maritza here who's watching as well. So let's talk a little bit about, what do you think social distancing is going to look like in a 5th grade class?
Oof. I've gone from classrooms of 34 4th graders to 25 4th graders. And I mean, the classrooms are already tiny, and I mean, we've heard this before. I could tell you everything that we know, that it's not possible to socially distance with the current classroom sizes we have. Now, the problem with that is that's a funding issue, but the funding issue had to be fixed a while ago because then the next roadblock is a teacher retention issue. Okay, we fund everything, but do we have teachers? So this is an issue that scales back, to 2008 before, and it's just going to hit us full force worse than it's ever been, because we can't fix the funding problem in time too.
Well, and I think, that's something we as educators here in Arizona understand, right? This systematic degradation of our public education system here in Arizona. I mean, we are just a petri dish for bad ideas. I say that all the time. Whether it's taking public taxpayer money and funneling it to private schools through vouchers or other things like that, or the constantly putting the burden on the taxpayers through or the homeowners. People need to understand, especially if you're new to Arizona and maybe you come from a state where they actually fully fund public education, that it is our legislature who continues to make these cuts. And that, so we have, as school districts, we are left with no choice but to go to our homeowners, our taxpayers, and to ask them for these override continuations. The district additional assistance hasn't come through in a really long time, and we thought this might be the year that we get it, and it wasn't quite what we need. So we have these buildings that are 50 years old, and they're literally crumbling around our kids' ears. Our school board races are incredibly important, so that, and another group of very nimble people, right? Because I remember I started teaching in 2008. I couldn't have picked a worse time. And I belong to our Creighton community. We have a quarterly forum, basically, where we get together with the community and we talk about issues facing the district. We maybe provide resources and tools to parents, just an opportunity to get together. But the first 5 years that I was in education, first of all, there was pay freeze. I didn't get a raise in the first 4 years that I taught. And then every single year we were like, okay, what is going to go on the chopping block now? What are we going to have to get rid of? And it was things like gifted. And in our district, we made the decision to keep all-day kindergarten, but there are some districts that don't have all-day kindergarten.
Well, Jeannie, it's funny you bring that up because, excuse me, there are some school districts, as at a Phoenix Elementary board meeting, where they had to stand up and justify their department to cuts. And this was, back in January, a little after that. And so it's still happening too, where people are having to get up and be like, well, my department doesn't deserve this cut because XYZ.
Now, what do you think about, and again, I'm sorry, we didn't really talk about this question before, but it just comes to mind. What I see a lot of districts doing right now is outsourcing things, whether it's bus drivers or food service workers. What are your thoughts about outsourcing those kinds of departments?
So this personally impacted my school. It's how I know Jeff Fortney so well, is because we have a plethora of special education teachers that we need, but we can't fill any of the positions. So we had contracted people come in, and it's a burden on districts. Ultimately, I mean, it's like a Band-Aid on a wound. Mm-hmm. And so am I adamantly against it? Not necessarily, but I think that if you're having to outsource, you also have to ask yourself, what have we not done on the inside as far as marketing goes, as far as pay goes, as far as morale goes? I think the contracting is a reflection on that as well, on top of the funding crisis.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that answers your question, but.
No, I'm just, it's one of those things that districts where I've been as well, it's something that has come up, where they're looking at, cutting budgets. And so sometimes the way to do that, it always makes me a little bit nervous because, well, first of all, it takes away, I think, the control of the district. I worry too, these are folks who, are they going through the same kind of background checks, and could people slip through the cracks and that kind of thing? Do they receive the same kind of professional development, where, you do have that ACEs training or trauma-informed care? do they get those things? And I suppose districts could individually make that decision to do so, but who knows better their community than the school district itself? And oftentimes too, they are some of the biggest employers in these communities as well for both our certified and our classified
Yeah.
staff. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna
absolutely.
say hi to Judy real quick. Hi, Judy. I'll see you tomorrow. So, all right, real quick, just for fun. So what are some of your hobbies, Nik? What's something that you do?
Ooh, I have recently started running in about the last year and did a run club at my school, and about 20 of my students and I ran a 10K. So I've been sticking up with running. That's been a really good hobby for me. And I do a lot of theater outside and a lot of work for, creative arts advocacy. I'm not sure if I'd ever shared that with you. But I was originally a theater major before I was an education major. So I've kept some of that, nothing in the last year, but definitely kept some of that intact. It keeps me grounded.
Agreed. I am a theater geek myself. I was in all the plays and musicals in high school. And then there's a great little theater on Central called the Torch Theater. It's an improv theater. And I made it through, I think, level 4. But that was one of the most fun things. I'm actually considering the possibility of an improv fundraiser, because virtual events are just hard in general. And then virtual fundraising, it's tricky, there's little like preparation as far as, having to organize caterers and things like that, but you want to have it fun. So I was thinking about the possibility of doing improv, and I've reached out to some of the folks from the Torch. We'll see if
that'd be awesome.
Doing. Yeah, it could be fun.
I know at one point you talked about a karaoke fundraiser too.
Yeah, I'm thinking about possibly doing that in June. So we'll see. It's just, yeah, you know what? All I can do, I'm a teacher, like we have to at least try and then pick ourselves up and try again, and if I fail, I'll just fail forward,
And it's all about engagement. And this time it's voter engagement.
Yeah. And I want to, so real quick too, somebody said here that the substitute quality has gone way down as a result of outsourcing. Get girls on the run in our district. Oh, okay. I see what she's saying. Okay. But yeah, so that's one of those areas where if you outsource it, you don't get those same subs because, maybe they don't get the same kind of respect, maybe the pay's a little bit different. So yeah, I'm not necessarily.
Anyone can be a substitute. That's another big problem.
Yeah.
Right? No, I absolutely agree. The quality and the access to subs. I mean, it's almost impossible to get a sub lots of times too, especially if you work in a little bit of a tougher demographic. It can be darn near impossible lots of times.
Oh, very true. So back in 2015, I actually worked. I was doing policy research at the former county superintendent office. Dr. Don Covey was the superintendent in 2015. And I subbed for a little bit while I was there, and it was almost impossible to get jobs back in 2015. So this time around, I kind of expected the same. And the district where I was subbing, I could have worked every single day without interruption if I wanted to, because, and it was constant, where they were getting other teachers to maybe cover this class period or that class period. And I think that speaks volumes to the stress that our teachers are under, and the fact that we can't keep our classes or our classrooms staffed with highly certified or highly qualified teachers.
Yeah. Well, to give you a little perspective, so the school that I just left also has a very high special education population as well. And they qualify for 7.5 sped teachers. 2.
Wow. That's just crazy. Yeah, it's definitely tough to be a teacher in Arizona. And that's why we need to trust teachers to be the leaders. I'm so happy that we've got people like you and Jeff. We've got Christine, who's running up in LD 28. We've got Eric Kurland, who's running in 23. And I know I'm probably missing people, Kathleen O'Neill, who's a retired principal. I mean, we've got some really fabulous educator candidates, and it's really time that we trust teachers. I woke up this morning to, I accidentally turned on Twitter notifications for one of my absolute favorite education researchers. Yes, I am that kind of nerd, but his name is Dr. Christopher Emden. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He wrote a book called For White Folks Who Teach in the Hood and all the rest of y'all.
Yep.
It's a great book. And he talks about how, you know, teachers are going to get through this crisis that we're in right now because teachers are nimble. You know, the best teachers can be nimble and move quickly. I highly recommend it. They did a South by Southwest education, and it was you know, basically a Zoom format just like this. And I can post the link in the comments after we're all done here, but it's definitely worth the watch. And he had, I can't remember the other two women that he had on with him, but it was just a really great discussion about how, you know, first, like you said, it's about the social emotional aspect of it and just loving our kids when they come back and just loving them unconditionally, you know. And then, you know, we'll figure the rest of it out. We're really good at building the airplane as we're flying. So real quick, I know that a lot of school board candidates are struggling to be able to get their petitions signed. So I want to give you an opportunity to share how folks could get your petitions if they need to.
Yeah.
What are the boundaries? So in case folks don't know Phoenix Elementary's boundaries, what are the boundaries?
Yeah, so it does do a little couple jagged turns around, but it's basically you're looking at Thomas down to a little bit past Buckeye, and then, or to Buckeye, I believe, or a little bit north of that. And then you're looking at 16th Street down past the Capitol there. So
okay.
You got neighborhoods, Garfield, you know, Emerson, Coronado, all those.
The Willow, yeah, okay. So how can folks, if they want to support your campaign or sign your petitions, how can they do that?
Yeah, so we do have a Facebook page that has a current event happening right now called our Signature Surge, where you can sign up and I'll drop off a petition for you, and you just try to either, you know, get 2 in your household, whatever that looks like. We'll take anything, and then I'll pick that up from you. So you can find that on the Facebook page, or you could check out the website. So the weird thing is I do spell my name a little bit differently. So when you look for my Facebook page, it's Nik for Phoenix L, and it's PHX, and I also spell Nik NIK. So
okay, great.
Search for me there.
Okay, well, it's almost 4 o'clock, so
Yeah.
say hi to Lisa real quick, who's also watching. But thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Jeannie.
For taking the bold step of running for office, because like I said earlier, you know, it's not a paid position. It's truly a labor of love. And we need more educators like you on our school boards, Nik. So
Well, thank you. And super excited to be in your journey as well as you're running. So thanks. I'm glad our paths connected. I can't imagine any other way at this point.
Right? All right. Well, I will see you later, Nik, and bye to everybody who's watching. And
bye, everyone. Thank you.
Jeff Fortney. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.